listening to Delmarva Live on 92.7 WGMD, WGMD.com. I'm Jake Smith. I'll be with you till noontime today, and I'm joined in studio by our regular guest who wasn't regular over the last month or so because we had election law to comply with. But now that the election is over, we welcome back Delaware Representative Rich Collins to Delmarva Live. Rich, congratulations on your re-election victory.
Well, thank you, and I'm so happy I'm able to get back in here. I was suffering real withdrawal symptoms there.
Well, thank you.
Quite a while.
Thank you. Well, a lot to talk about this morning. First of all, let's talk about the election last week. And Republicans here in the first state did not do very well. I think that's an understatement. But your job, it seems to me, becomes a lot tougher going back to Dover for the next legislative session in January. What say you?
Well, I agree with that for two reasons. I will say we've been here before. I think I'm trying to remember when I came in. At one point, I think the year before I came in, they only had 14 representatives. And then we had 16, and now we're down to 15. So they were a little worse on that front. And we've also been worse in the Senate in recent years. We still have 9 out of 21, which means they still cannot pass a tax bill in the Senate because that requires a 3/5 vote without at least one Republican vote.
Right.
That was not the case, I think, 6 years ago, 5 and 6 years ago. There were fewer Republican senators. So on a pure numbers standpoint, we were actually a little worse before I got there. I've been there for 4 years. I'm starting into my 5th year. So 5 and 6 years ago, we were in worse condition. But the part that's worse today is the level of partisanship.
It's worse, yeah.
Well, I want to say, though, that in Delaware so far, now we'll see when we get back in. We've heard, but I haven't met them, some of the new upstate folks.
Yeah.
Have heard, are going to be considerably more progressive than the folks.
Oh, you can bet on it. Now, I need to go ahead.
Well, we had a ton of retirements in the House, and a lot of them were mostly as you would expect, the ones who'd been there the longest and who were less connected to that real progressive, that hard progressivism.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if we're going to have the compromise that we did have some compromise in the past, but whether that still exists or not is going to be questionable.
You're listening to Delmarva Live on 92.7 WGMD, WGMD.com, and via your WGMD app. And the studio smells of coffee. If the studio smells of coffee, I can guarantee you that Delaware State Representative Rich Collins is here with us, and he is. 302-945-9292 is our number. 302-945-9292 is our number here at the studio. If you're listening online, 800-518-9292 and pound 927 on your Verizon wireless cell phone. And let's go to our first call of this segment with Delaware Representative Rich Collins. Good morning, caller. You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jake and Rich. This is Linda from Rehoboth.
Hi, Linda.
I was wondering if you could answer a couple of questions for me concerning the voting at the fire department in Lewis.
Okay, I'll try. I wasn't there, but we'll see what happens. Go ahead.
Right. Well, I have heard people say that, once you go into the door, and everybody goes in one door and out the same door. I don't understand why, they don't go in one door and out another. But when I went up there to register, I went in, the line from E to L. I went ahead voluntarily, gave her my license, but I didn't get anything back. And once, I signed my name, and, I said, well, where do I go now? And she cut across. Well, what you have to do is you have to cut across the lines to get into the lines to vote. Now, I didn't have anything stating on me that I had registered. I didn't have anything. And while I was in line, I was talking to a couple of other people. We were all looking at each other, bewildered, and nobody had a little card or anything. And as we stood there, we finally got up to vote, and I didn't have anything to hand the guy. I went in the booth, and of course, I guess they had ran out of stickers. But my question is, and what the questions were that, the other people, so many people were filtering in and out. How do you know some people didn't just walk through the door and go straight to the line to vote? And believe me, they could have.
Well, that's a good question, Linda. Go ahead, Rich.
That's a pretty good question. I will say that everyone who's doing the work, most of them have done it for many years. I know when I went into my polling place in Millsboro, I saw people I'd seen at many, many elections. So it's more, I would say, organized chaos than you realize. They do have a procedure. And look, I still have enough faith in human nature in Sussex County. I wouldn't necessarily have the same faith in some parts of Philadelphia or Chicago. But
what about Newcastle? Would you have faith in Newcastle County voting? I wouldn't.
Well, there might be some places, but the problem there is the registration numbers are so overwhelming that it really wouldn't make any difference.
Well, let me ask you a question, Rich. Where I voted in Sussex County, it was the same situation that Linda is talking about. People went in through one door and out the same door. I understand what she's saying, but there was a Democrat monitor at my voting place. Why didn't the Republicans have a monitor there as well? Why did the Republicans just accept that everything's always on the up and up? Democrats certainly don't. They're down here in Sussex County. They're monitoring our elections. Why didn't we have people up in Newcastle County watching what they're doing?
Well, keep in mind that in the election department itself, the employees are split up by party. There are people in the election department who are state employees who are hired because they are Republicans or Democrat.
Right, but I understand why don't the Republicans, who have their best interests monitoring an election, because the Democrats certainly did. Why didn't the Republicans?
It's a matter of having enough volunteers, and it's purely volunteer work. Let me tell you, I don't know this for an absolute fact, but in my belief, one of the huge advantages that the union endorsements give the Democrats is a ready pool of workers for any purpose, and workers who probably get paid in one sense or another. So it's not a fair playing field in that respect.
Somebody just sent me a message. Those people are called challengers. They're there to challenge
checker
a vote.
Challengers.
Yeah.
Yes. And the party has not been able to put that together for the last few years. It's a tremendous amount of work.
But don't you think, Rich, an election that was this important, when you look at what the Republicans were this close to taking control of the Senate, that they should have had that checker challenger system in place? And if not, then does it go back to Mike Harrington? And should Mike Harrington, given what happened in this election, should he walk away and resign? I mean, I've had a lot of people call into this broadcast that want to clean house and have younger people running the Republican establishment here in the first state. They just don't feel that they're getting the job done.
Well, let them step up. This is the problem, folks. This is all volunteer stuff. And every party chairman who does this ends up spending tens of thousands of dollars of his own money, and there aren't people there ready to help.
So you're saying there's not enough Republican volunteers?
People that are complaining are not saying, I want to run for party chairman. It's an open election. I remember several years ago, we had an election, and there were 4 or 5 people who actually ran. Mm-hmm. And if I remember right, that was the year that, oh, gracious, somebody of Sussex County won it. Mental blank. But anyway, I can't think of the name, even though I know him like he's standing here right now.
Okay, we understand.
But anyway, as far as why I'm not suspicious, I didn't see any election results that were not what I expected. There weren't any close elections. So if you're talking 8 or 10 votes, or even 100, 200 votes somewhere, then okay. But there weren't any. I mean, I don't think there was a single one that you would say was in doubt because the numbers were close.
So you don't feel that, given the Republicans' poor performance in this midterm election, that there should be any changes in those who run the Republican Party here in the first state?
I didn't say that. I said we need people to step up and get involved. We don't have them. Now, in my district, and I want to praise them to the heavens, we've just created, not we, I had nothing to do with it. I found out about it after it happened. We had a new 41st District Republican Club spring up. A gentleman by the name of Bob Blatshaw, I hate just putting his name because Tina, his wife, they did yeoman's work, not just them.
But they stepped up and they volunteered.
They are 100% volunteers. There is a wonderful 38th District Club, Republican Club, in the 38th District,
right
on the southeast corner. But they're all volunteers who do it because they want to. And in many, many of these districts, there simply is no one who will do it. It's not paid work. You can't make them do it. I mean, it's one of my huge frustrations. But to blame it on the party folks is us.
Yeah,
it's like our whole government is us. If we don't want to participate, then those who do are going to take over. So, I mean, I believe in honesty, being as honest as I possibly can when I talk about anything political. And that's all there is to it. Now, in my election, I'll tell you this. I ran against an incumbent the first time and was able to, the second time, be victorious.
Right.
I had a lot of people who joined my team who were opposed to that person, and then some who favored me. But now that I'm an incumbent, and now that that is over with, that battle, in terms of someone who's already there, frankly, I'm having more trouble getting the volunteers. There's just not the emotion. Now, quote, I'm expected to win.
So your message, Rich, to Republicans out there, or those who vote Republican, is that if you're not happy with what happened last week, get involved. That's your message.
That's the message. And I'll tell you, folks, particularly the gun owners, this is the key.
They're coming for our guns this year. You can bet on it.
I really fear that we are going to lose all or most, not all, because we can't lose them all because we have a really good, strong Delaware Constitution.
Which can be changed if you vote with a 2-year voting effort. You can change the Delaware Constitution, right?
You can, however, we have enough. It's a 2/3 vote requirement for that. Not just 2 years, 2 sessions. So it would be this year and then skip next year. And then 3 years from now, they could try it again. But I don't think there's any way that they have enough people who would not support our amendment. I don't think there's any way they can do it. So we do have that power. We have the power to stop a tax increase in the Senate. We have the power to influence the bond bill because that's required with a 3/4 vote. But as far as gun rights goes, I don't want people to be misled. Last year, all this talk was, look at all these people that showed up at Legg Hall. We really showed them when they threatened our gun right. Folks, that really does not mean as much as you think, because they know that probably the majority of those people were from Sussex County.
Right.
Folks, in Sussex County, we won every single election but one, and we have for several times now. But that's not changing the threat. What you've got to do is start. One of the biggest, hardest things we have is a problem is funding. I mean, our challenger candidates absolutely starve for money. So what does the money do? Folks, if you're not super well known, the incumbent is always better known.
Well, the power of the incumbency is something that has been, obviously, most elections, the power of the incumbency is something that is very
correct. So if you're a challenger candidate, it is incredibly difficult to beat an incumbent. And the way you got to do it is you got to have enough money to publicize your name so people at least know who the heck you are.
Right.
But we can't get people to. We don't have some of these big liberal organizations. Frankly, a lot of them get their money from the federal government and then turn around and give it back to candidates. We don't have that.
Right.
So I don't know. Let's go. My frustration is starting to come out.
I understand. No, that's okay. Frustration is how we find solutions to fix problems for the future. Let's go to our next caller on line 2. Caller, go ahead. You're on with Delaware State Representative Rich Collins. Go ahead.
Good morning, Jake and Rich. Hey, this is Ken from Georgetown, Rich.
Yep.
When I first got into politics years and years and years ago, I started out as a checker challenger.
Yep, I did that. I did it myself at one point.
That's when we had a tremendous amount of people very involved in the Republican Party back then. It seems like everybody has grown comfortable because Sussex County is Republican.
I think you just hit the nail on the head. You're comfortable is a good word for it.
All right. Thank you very much, caller.
That was one of my great volunteers, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Appreciate him a lot.
You're listening to Delmarva Live on 92.7 WGMD, WGMD.com, and via your WGMD app. We're very pleased to have with us, once again, Delaware Representative Rich Collins. Rich, Delaware made the news this week. Hundreds of inmates from Delaware's maximum security prison are now being transferred to Pennsylvania in an effort to reduce overtime for what is severely understaffed corrections officers at our prisons. What can be done legislatively to address what is obviously a continued problem going forward with not having enough corrections officers in our prisons?
Well, I think there's really only one thing, and that's to raise the salary to a competitive number. And we have this other huge problem.
Is that primarily why they're not able to lure and attract enough corrections officers to the prison? Is it a matter of salary? The salary is not high enough?
Well, I think, first of all, keep in mind that being a prison guard means voluntarily spending a good part of your life in prison.
Mm-hmm.
That alone would require me, if I were going to consider it, to be paid a lot of money. I wouldn't do it for less. Number two, there is that threat to personal safety that is always there. So I would not say it is a very, very difficult job. You're around absolutely miserable, failing human beings all day long. I mean, their behavior, some of them are a little better than, well, I've got plenty of, I don't want to go there.
Well, let me just ask you, there is not a problem in New York or New Jersey, surrounding states, with luring people into being a corrections officer, which is, considered, similar to a police officer, obviously. Why then are we having problems in Delaware? You mentioned the salary. You mentioned it's difficult work, but it's no more difficult than what it is in New York and New Jersey, surrounding states. Why aren't they having problems luring, attracting corrections officers to those positions, do you think?
Well, in Delaware, the salary thing is much more favorable for police officers. For example, they have a system where every year, when you first get hired, every year for so many years, you get an automatic increase in pay. The prison guards did not have that. I don't think they have it yet. Furthermore, so that means basically every year they get farther behind.
Yeah.
Then you also got to remember that we're right now, we have many, many more jobs in the country than we have people to fill them. That's in all kinds of jobs.
You think that perhaps the people who could be interested in corrections jobs are having opportunities to work elsewhere because the economy is so good right now?
Absolutely. And the thing is that we hit our really disaster point right at the moment when this job shortage started to develop in a big way. So we're trying to come out of a hole at the very same time that the dirt is being taken away to fill the hole. So I tell you, as a legislator, folks, again, a lot of people have a misinformation about what we can do. I'm only one of 41 in the House. I get to vote on the budget. I'm not a member of the Budget Committee. It's very unlikely I will be this year. That's not yet been decided. So it's really only the members of the Budget Committee. By continuing with the one-party rule, you're going to have 8 Democrats and only 4 Republicans on that committee. I personally believe that Republicans make more responsible financial decisions, but the Democrats, in my view, are more interested in funding social programs, letting people out of prison, letting the drug dealers go free as quickly as you.
Well, don't we have a new attorney general coming into office that has talked about that very thing you're speaking about, Rich?
Right, and they are not that interested in paying prison guards and putting people in prison.
Right.
I only get to vote yes or no on the budget, and I can tell you right now, my vote will be no, because I know the spending priorities are not going to change. I know they're absolutely wrong, but that's all I can do on the budget front, other than encourage, and that